Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, now since everyone is ready, you can start whenever you're ready.
Okay, cool. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Tony and I negate the resolution. Our framework is two parts. Firstly, this resolution
one of the judges said she can't hear anything.
Okay. So Judge Sandra, can you hear me? Maybe you should leave and re-enter the room. Please wait for a second, and there's some problem with the judge. She cannot hear us, and I've told her to leave the room and re-enter. Okay, so Judge Sandra, can you hear me now? Okay. Okay, we can start. Sandra said it's good for her, and if you're ready, you can start.
Yeah, sure. Wait. Tony and I negate the resolution. We believe the framework is two parts. Firstly, the resolution today does not call for a solution or solvency from either side of today's debate. It simply states that Conn has to prove that personal data has done more harm than good. Secondly, this debate should be judged upon a cost-benefit analysis framework. Contention 1 on abuse. Personal data has served to exploit consumers and perpetuate the cycle of poverty through surveillance capitalism, which is defined by the Washington Post in January 2019 as claiming private human experience as data for translation into behavior predictions that are bought and sold in a new kind of private marketplace. Personal data, as used by tech company, has hurt people in four ways. Firstly, through the abuse of healthcare. According to Vox News in 2014, the pharmaceutical industry has moved out of its clinic and into the digital world for much more insidious forms of marketing. This is personalized marketing aimed at physicians. The New England Journal argues that the impact is harming consumers, as ultimately, pharmaceutical marketing leads to overdiagnosis, overtreatment, and the overuse of medications. Digital advertising creates new pathways for reaching physicians, allowing delivery of marketing messages at the point of care when clinical decisions are being made. As the Lown Institute explains, we are currently in an unseen epidemic from the excessive prescribing of medications. If nothing changes, medication overload will contribute to the premature death of 150,000, such as in the opioid epidemic, and reduce the quality of life for millions more. Secondly, on the abusive marketing of addictive drugs. According to the University of Manchester, tech companies target consumers and doctors with expensive and inappropriate drug commercials. The NABP records in 2018 that in the US, 54% of sites without valid prescriptions were selling controlled substances. The overdose death rate from synthetic opiates more than doubled in the US. Such marketing killed more than 250,000 children globally every single year. Third of all, through discrimination and harming those in poverty. According to the Washington University Law Review, big data increases economic inequality, injures the economic stability and the civil rights of the poor, such as when they are targeted for predatory financial products, charge more for goods and services online, or profile in ways that limit their employment and educational opportunities. Fourthly, on racism and crime. Amnesty International investigated the Gay Matrix, a British police list made up of 4,000 young potential gang members, which currently contains disproportionately higher numbers of African Americans, has been shown to shut them out of jobs by labeling them as criminals. According to The Guardian, 40% of those on the list had no link to violence. Another example, Compass, a computer program currently used in federal courts, was shown by ProPublica to have an 80% error rate and shows significant racial disparities, labeling Black defendants as 77 times more likely to be at a higher risk of committing a future violent crime. Contention 2 on echo chambers. According to a study done by Google's DeepMind AI Lab, algorithms and search engines of big data companies such as YouTube and Facebook give rise to extremism and hate speech in the form of echo chambers, where extremism is affirmed by the algorithm. They concluded that feedback loops in the recommendation systems can give rise to echo chambers and filter bubble, which can narrow the user's content exposure and ultimately shift their worldview. Furthermore, according to a study done of over 12 million YouTube and Facebook users, researchers at Northwestern University concluded that nearly all of the users became highly polarized. The impact is terrorism and extreme radicalization. According to RAND Corporations, of the 15 cases of radical violent domestic terrorism incidents, they found that the internet enhanced opportunities to become radicalized as a result of enabling connections with like-minded individuals from all across the world and pushing you content that suited you and pushed you into more radical zones. For all the 15 individuals, the internet has become a direct source of information and propaganda for the extremist actions. For all these reasons above, we urge upon ballot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does the opposing team need prep time before their constructive speech?
Hear me?
All right, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Okay. Guys ready? Opponents ready? Okay, so time starts now. Result, technology companies use of personal data is more beneficial than harmful. We stand on the pro side. First, observation. Data is driver of growth and change. Tech companies use of personal data opens the door for the mass public as a grand social good for every individual in the society. Definition. Technology companies focuses primarily on development technology, providing technology as a service. Personal data is any information that relates to identify living individual. Framework. The debate is outweighing the harms and benefits as suggested in the resolution. We believe that the social good should always be prioritized over individual harms. If we could prove that overall the tremendous social benefits outweigh certain incidental harm, then we should win the debate. Contention 1, economic growth. Personal data can be used to collect more accurate customers' feedback, with which manufacturers can make better management decisions, discover their deficiencies, and provide better products to the customers with better functions but lower prices. This will underpin new ways of productivity, growth, and consumer surplus. The impact is twofold. First of all, higher life quality and more opportunities for companies and consumers. According to McKinsey Global Institute report, a retailer using data to the full can increase its operating margin by more than 60%. It is estimated that the data could generate an additional $3 trillion in value every year in just 7 industries. Over half of this value will go to customers in forms such as easier price comparisons and better matching between educational institutes and students. Services enabled by personal location data can also allow consumers to capture $600 billion in economic surplus. Second, economic growth is crucial for social good as it creates the additional resources that make it possible to achieve higher living standards, national security, a healthier environment, and more liberal and open economies and societies, according to Silk, professor of economics at Pace University. Contention 2, healthcare. Hospitals and medical companies do fall under the category of tech companies since it involves high density of technology when providing its services, and tech giants like Google, Amazon, and Apple have stepped into the healthcare sector. The application of personal data makes the healthcare system more effective in 3 ways. First of all, medical care becomes more personalized and nuanced for each individual. According to Nico Martin, owner of NR Digital Consulting, using big data from large patient populations, a variety of sources such as DNA, RNA sequencing, the patient's condition can be compared to groups that historically have been diagnosed and treated. This then determines the course of treatments that produce the best outcome for each particular person. Second, by cross-comparing examples of personal data of former patients, we're able to identify and predict disease earlier. Dr. Shay Spurlock, PhD of medical at Vanderbilt, had conducted a pilot study in 2018 on a typical progressive diseases attacking the nervous system and immune system, known as the MS. The study analyzed healthcare claims for 20 million people in New York, compromising 4 billion personal data points. The approach predicted with over 90% accuracy the onset of MS individuals within this patient population at least 8 months before the traditional treatment. Third, facing epidemics, using the personal location data can identify close contact individuals and conduct targeted quarantines and treatments. The COVID-19 is the best example. According to CSIS, countries like China, South Korea, and Singapore have successfully used digital technologies involving personal location and journey data to contain the spread of the virus while keeping their societies relatively open. And the data is guaranteed to be encrypted and anonymized. By doing that, China has reduced the COVID-19 caseload from the peak of 3,500 daily cases in February to 0 in mid-March. However, countries like the US, which haven't applied the methods, are still having the rapid growth in the cases. Impact. The fundamental purpose of healthcare is to enhance quality of life. According to McKinsey Global Institute in Tempest, data algorithms could accelerate the proof of power treatments for many cancers, improve clinical outcomes, and reduce costs for treating cancers. The potential value from data in healthcare sector will be more than $300 billion in value every year, 2/3 of which will be in forms of reducing national healthcare expenditures, which means patients can save $200 billion every year. Our ProSat is picturing a triple win situation where the customers, companies, and society can all maximize their interest by the simple logic of pain and gain. However, the concept is being selfish and arrogant, wanting all the personal benefits, but not willing to give out even a little bit suggesting, referring feedback. For all these reasons above, we're proud to propose.
All right, thank you for that. Does any side need prep time before Crossfire?
We're good.
Okay, then whenever you guys are ready.
Okay, cool. Time starts now. If I make money and I gain a lot of revenue and profits from a bad way by abusing people, do you still think this is a net benefit?
We can see that the $3 trillion being generated, half of them are going to the customers. That is solid evidence. Let me have a question to you. Why do you think that people still use Facebook even after Cambridge Analytica?
When they use Facebook, there are other things they can do on Facebook. And Cambridge Analytica is one example of misinformation, but we think a lot of people still use it because they want to message their friends. This doesn't involve personal data. You can text your friends on Messenger without actually using Facebook. And we think a lot of benefits and the harms. Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
Okay, first ask a question.
Why would you need targeted ads, or why would you need to improve the system when you could do it with surveys too?
We never say target ads in our whole contention. You're not engaged with
Why would you, how do you improve the system exclusively with personal data when you also do it with surveys that are anonymous?
We can explain it to you later, but target advertisement is never included in our focus.
Can you answer my question? How do you do it? Why is it exclusive when you can use anonymous surveys?
First of all, personal survey is also identifiable. Actually, 99% of the information can be traced back to individual, which is included by personal data. We'll explain it later. Let me have a question to you. Let me have a question to you.
Sure, yeah.
Do you think that people are responsible for our ideas of what we think, what we speak, and what we publish?
We think they are responsible. However, the technology amplifies your racist ideas, amplifies your political radicalization. It is like, for example, a mentally ill person walking down the street, and then you give him a gun so he can shoot others. I think technology enables these people to be more harm than good.
Sorry, that is the fallacy. I am a responsible being. If I had a gun, I know that I should not shoot a person with that. That is
Right,
how
we're telling you that social media are pushing you into more extremist ideas. The attack in New Zealand, the
So what
attack
is
in
the
Surrey that
mechanism?
killed more than
What
80
is the
people.
mechanism?
These are all links, direct links. And I'm also really confused. Like, if you're not using personal ads, how exactly do you improve customers' experience? Can you explain the
According to
mechanism
McKinsey
behind that?
Global Institute report, there are several ways in which using personal data can create value. First of all, collect more accurate and detailed performance information and boost performance. And then use data collection and analysis to conduct experiments to make better management decisions. Third, use data for high frequency nowcasting and just business leverage and time. Fourth, use data to improve the
Why would you
products and
need
services.
personalized
Five,
data? These all data are all anonymous, right? Like, I can see my performance.
there-
How many people are on my website without knowing their names and where they are? How's that related to personal data?
Only by getting the personalized data can we do personalized and nuanced services and treatment to the targets I want. Let me have a question to you.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So do you think that we have the right to voluntarily give out our personal data for other rights, including the right to health, the right to life, the right to convenience, as you said, interacting
Right
with
to life
other-
is the most
Sorry,
important
but
topic.
time's up.
Okay.
Right. Cheers. Does the con side need prep time before rebuttal?
Can I have 10 seconds, please?
That's fair. Starting now.
Sorry, how much seconds?
10
10
seconds.
seconds.
Okay.
All right, that's good. Okay, my time starts now. Beginning with my opposition's first contention about how they're going to be optimizing this for businesses. The first thing we would tell you is that they're not using personal data here. They read you this card that they're using data to optimize their business, but they never specify which one of these depends on the collection of consumer or business data. We see that this is not relevant to today's debate, but even if you think it is, we would tell you that targeted or personalized businesses simply are not effective in the status quo. Our example from the New York Times proves to you this. According to the New York Times, when they cut all personalized treatment ads in Europe or personalized treatment of businesses in Europe, the result was not only did revenue stabilize, but actually it increased significantly since they decided to cut it. What you essentially can glean from that is that businesses don't need to depend upon these abusive practices. But third, even then, we think that this is not a worthy trade-off to democracy. According to The Guardian, they tell you the fact that targeted advertising and targeted marketing, along with the digital economy's reliance on advertising-based business models, is one of the most destructive trends in the modern world because it has led to the proliferation of fake news and clickbait. It has fueled surveillance capitalism and normalized pervasive tracking and data mining. If we want to do something about the proliferation of misinformation and erosion of trust in traditional institutions, it is not enough to regulate or fact-check political ads. We need to crack down upon these personalized marketing practices that they're talking about. But fourth, even then, consumers are not the ones benefiting from this. According to Gonzalo Miranda from MarketWatch, he tells you that this kind of situation actually decreases overall welfare because every single consumer will be forced to pay the maximum of what they're willing to spend for each good or service they purchase, keeping nothing extra for themselves. Nowadays, online retailers are explicitly exploiting the people at the very bottom of the social income ladder to ensure that they will pay this discriminatory pricing, and we think this is a really, really bad thing. But now let's go on to their second tension about healthcare. The first thing we would tell you is that studies have shown repeatedly that electronic healthcare fails. According to a June 2014 Journal of the American Medical Association, they actually found that meaningful users of electronic health records actually fail to deliver improved care for 5 chronic diseases. But second of all, most importantly, I believe that this discriminates against those in poverty and with disabilities in the long run. According to Mason Marks in 2019, emergent medical data actually promotes discrimination in which automated decision-making exploits vulnerable populations such as children, seniors, people with disabilities, immigrants, and low-income individuals. Furthermore, Facebook actually allowed advertisements to exclude people from receiving housing-related ads based on their disabilities. On the basis of emergent medical data, people will be denied access to housing, jobs, insurance, and other important resources without even knowing it. But fourth, we would tell you that they are racist in selecting who gets healthcare in the first place and who doesn't. According to ProPublica in 2018, the industry has a history of boosting profits by only signing up healthy people who do not need this coverage. But first of all, we would believe that the use of personal data by healthcare companies is a really bad idea because patients may be denied coverage and pay higher premiums due to inaccurate data. Once again, according to ProPublica, what they tell you is that they charge poor people more because it makes them harder to get the care that they need, and employers can actually decide to not hire people based off the data points that could indicate high medical costs in the future. But fourth, we would tell you that health data is especially valuable and now easily hackable. According to Ellen Nouveau from SecureLink, she tells you that the American Medical Collection Agency actually found that hacks have been increasing by the day to day because the industry has some of the worst cybersecurity practices worldwide, and now 32 million hacks have been exposed throughout the world. But furthermore, let's go on to the last contention about how this is going to help the coronavirus effort. The first thing we would tell you is that this raises more questions than solutions. According to Bloomberg News, it tells you that nobody wants to turn their mobile phones into a digital version of the medieval leper bell. It is possible to craft technologies and policies that can only provide limited data access to health authorities when a pandemic has been declared. But secondly, we believe that more importantly, this exposes more vulnerable individuals. According to NBC News, if potential patients have to register with a Google account using their real name, this dissuades certain groups of individuals from getting screened. Take a moment to imagine what it is like for an undocumented immigrant living through the coronavirus crisis. For those who have symptoms of COVID-19, a trip to the emergency room could bring a death sentence, deportation to a far country far less equipped to handle the threat of the pandemic. If even a small fraction of the undocumented immigrants feel unsafe in today's situation, the virus gets worse. Therefore, we would strongly urge for a calm ballot in today's debate. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that.
1 minute prep time. Can I take
how
1
much?
minute prep time?
Okay.
1 minute.
Starting now.
开始了，声音播不进来，就是
Time's up. Time's up.
Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
My time starts now. Our opponent's rebuttal is mainly a random combination of evidence that does not relate to what we have specifically offered you in our constructive speech. We think that most of their attacks about the EHR, about targeted advertising, have never been brought up in our case, and we don't see where these attacks come from. I'm going to do something different and respond to their cases specifically, talk about their evidence and their specific logical links. Firstly, they talked about abuse and 4 subpoints here. First, healthcare. They said pharmacies are moving into the digital world for marketing, and there's overdiagnosis, overtreatment, and premature death as an impact. 2 responses. 1, we think that fundamentally pharmaceutical marketing should be regulated and not allowed. This is not a problem with personal data. This is a problem with governmental regulations. Second, overdiagnosis is not a unique impact, as it always exists. Doctors are afraid they will get sued, so they order multiple tests even when they're certain they know what the diagnosis is. A 2010 Gallup survey estimated that $650 billion annually can be attributed to defensive medicine. There's also an expensive mix of treatments that's already prevalent in today's medical system. US medical practitioners also tend to use a more expensive mix of treatments. Secondly, they talked about addictive drugs and how pharmacies are selling opioids and drugs without the permission of certain authorities. 2 responses. 1, it's untopical because there's firstly no involvement of personal data in this procedure. Secondly, pharmacies are simply not tech companies. I think that is common sense. Second response, even if personal data facilitated the advertisement of these agencies, the problem lies not with personal data, but with certain individuals illegally obtaining drugs without permission of certain authorities. It's the responsibility, again, of the government to clamp down on such practices, so it's largely irrelevant in today's debate. Finally, they talked about discrimination, right? They said there are predatory financial advertisements that limit poor people's outlook. 3 responses. First, targeted advertisement is based on the premise that people are voluntarily accepting the fact that they're being advertised. You can opt out in several ways. For instance, in Facebook, under the ad settings option, you'll control what ads show up for you, including ads that are attracted from other places online. The first option under this menu, ads based on your use of websites and apps, can be disabled to stop seeing ads for products you recently searched for. Second, cons analysis assumes that poor people are easily influenced by advertisements and often purchase things out of impulse. We reject this problematic premise. We think the poor can control their desires just like the rich. We think their analysis is discriminatory. Thirdly, positive and negative effects coexist. Not all desires are artificially created. We think con team have to admit that. While targeted advertising encourages consumers to purchase certain products, it also makes shopping largely more convenient and allows you to find the ideal product. Fourthly, on racism and crime, they gave 2 examples of Compass and a list of criminals that are published in England. 2 responses. 1, there are regulations in response to these unacceptable automations. In response, according to a law published in 2019, SB 5527, it requires ads deployed in the public sector to demonstrate that they do not discriminate, that they adhere to third-party recommendations, and that they provide simple explanations of their decisions. Secondly, the problem is not the data, it's the people that use it. Hence, it's a non-unique issue. They are assumptions and choices made by human bias and ignorance. We don't see why personal data is to blame for that. Finally, actually, data algorithms can be used to identify discrimination, inequality, and racism. We think identifying and understanding discrimination is the premise of effectively solving it, according to Ruben Binz, University of Oxford. Their second contention is about echo chambers and how YouTube and Facebook makes people more radical and polarized. 2 responses. 1, we think news literacy is really the key here because fake and biased news inevitably exists on both sides, and human development necessarily brings along an explosion of information and hence misinformation. People with poor judgment always believe in whatever they're told and always get fooled, and both sides work. The solution is more education on media literacy, the ability to access, analyze, and evaluate what's being read, not to ban content from being published. Secondly, polarization is non-unique because we've seen the American public being more polarized every 4 years, even before the rise of tech corporations. It's more of a cultural problem than a political one. It's because the progressive culture that first emerged in the 1960s has now come to control many key American institutions. Thirdly, there's a study from the University of Northern Iowa that says social media does not lead to polarization because for every measure, we see that the oldest group experiences larger changes in polarization than the youngest age group, and the oldest age groups do not actually get involved in social media. For these reasons, their case simply does not stand.
All right, thank you for that. Does any side need prep time before crossfire? If not, jump right into it.
All right, I believe I have the first question. If I am a single mother who is struggling to pay rent, do you think that there is a kill switch for me to stop the price discrimination that is being enforced on me?
Firstly, we think targeted advertising can be stopped. Secondly, price discrimination.
I'm not talking about targeted advertising. I'm not talking about targeted advertising. Is there a kill switch to stop corporations? Is there a kill switch to stop big corporations from enforcing price discrimination upon me?
I understand
Yes
your
or
question. I think price discrimination is not harmful, and therefore there's no need to stop it. Price discrimination is a common strategy in economics.
So if I am a single mother who cannot pay my rent, and I have many kids to take care of, and I'm balancing multiple jobs at the same time, and I have to pay more for water and for basic necessities, do you think that does not impact my life?
I don't understand what you're meaning, and I think what price
we can explain
discrimination
this later.
is that when it identifies certain individuals that are poor, it makes them pay less, right? Because it wants
that's not what the evidence says. We have given you multiple examples of real-world corporations that are currently discriminating against those in the poor. But if you want to ask a question, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, my question. Why are you restricting the freedom of individuals to enter into contracts that are mutually beneficial, at least to themselves?
Could you further clarify this in the context of today's debate?
Yeah, so in today's debate, certain individuals are voluntarily signing up for the services provided by certain corporations, and these individuals,
most of the time, we have to think about
them.
What they mean when, okay, first of all, 2 layers of responses, right? First of all, we don't think that these consumers are making educated choices. We don't think they're consenting with the knowledge in mind. A lot of consumers, they don't read the terms and conditions. They don't know that they're participating within surveillance capitalism. That's why we see things such as transforming herd pricing. But second of all, we would tell you that it's not beneficial. People such as people of color and people with disabilities are currently being shut out of the healthcare system. We don't think they're participating in a mutually benefiting relationship. These are simply facts. We don't see statistics on your side. Can I ask you a question? Okay, great. So you were talking about this idea of how people are always going to be polarized. If there has been an increase in the amount of extremist attacks that the RAND Corporation says is directly linked to echo chambers, do you think that plays into this idea that every 4 years people just go insane?
Okay, firstly, I think your evidence is largely anecdotal, right? You cannot simply base the assumption that social media
The RAND Corporation did a 15 case study. They did 15 case studies where they looked specifically at every single terrorist, and they linked it directly back to these filter bubbles and these echo chambers.
Yes, but don't you think there's something inherently wrong with people who are so radicalized that they choose to
sacrifice? We think that there is definitely something which shaped them that way, but we think that the personal data has a huge role to play in this, because not only did it provide them with the information of how to conduct these terrorist acts, but it also bolstered their narrative and allowed it to spread in the world, and also allowed them to do this in the first place.
In our rebuttal, we've offered you empirical evidence that old people are more likely to be polarized in the status quo, and old people are
first of all,
likely to participate in social media.
First of all, you don't give us a source for that. Okay, that's first of all. And then second of all, you don't have a source.
Time's up.
That's time.
All right, thank you for that. Does the con side need prep time before summary speech?
Yeah, I'll take running prep, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, that's fair. Running now.
I'm good to go.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. 3 questions in my speech. Firstly, on better products, secondly, on healthcare, and third of all, on racism. But before that, I just want to make something really clear. They gave us a lot of responses about regulation. They said regulations can fix anything and everything. We are talking mainly about the technology themselves. We're not talking about regulations and technology. We're saying technology and personal data is far more beneficial. But second of all, I think this is a really simple analogy. If there's a murder on the street, we say the murderer is harmful, even though there are regulations in place to try to deter that murder from killing someone in the first place. So I don't think regulations is an adequate response from their side. Second of all, we told you it's not about the solvency debate. They cannot come up here and say that educational literacy is what we need, because we're just trying to prove personal data by technology companies is harmful or beneficial. 3 questions then. Firstly, on better products. The moment they came up here in their first speech and said that there's a 60% margin increase from these companies is the moment basically they conceded that these companies are profiting off these poor people. They said 2 things. They said, firstly, that it is a mutual agreement between you and the company. But I don't think this is true, because you think the company believes and tricks you into thinking this is a mutual agreement, when in fact you don't really know that you can actually turn off the ads. The majority of people don't really know that you can turn off the ads on Facebook. And also, secondly, they conceded themselves that if you're making 60% more money from these personalized things, then I think you're basically tricking the poor into buying these things in the first place. What exactly is the impact of this? We told you that these companies are profit driven, and the impact is twofold. Firstly, it leads to overdiagnosis and actually pushing more people into poverty because they're charged more for prices that they don't actually want to buy. But second of all, we told you that you actually increase the political inclinations, and we increase the radicalization of these people. Because if NRA or the fastest organization puts ads on Facebook, then Facebook is going to push them more ads or push them in the direction of echo chambers. What this means is that they're prioritizing profits over the lives of people who are lost in the Sri Lanka attack, the lives of people who are lost in the New Zealand attack. The New Zealand attacker explicitly cited social media, Facebook, and pushing manifestos as an incentive of why he committed the attack in the first place. These are 15 international incidents that are all linked to echo chambers, that are all linked to personal data. And we don't think it is enough for them to say that old people do it. Because if old people use social media, then I think I don't really get why the rebuttal makes sense in this case. Second question then about healthcare. They consider themselves that Google and Amazon integrates into healthcare. Google and Amazon are profit-driven companies. They want to make profit. That's why they're likely to overdiagnose over use of medication. At least 150,000 deaths and 250,000 deaths of children every single year. But second of all, even if you don't believe us, we told you the majority of people who you actually want to save are the seniors, are the illegal immigrants, are the poor people. And these people are afraid to go to the hospital because they know they're going to be overcharged, or these illegal immigrants don't want to go to the hospital because if they go, they'll be deported. In this case, these illegal immigrants don't have conditions to self-isolate, to self-quarantine. If they don't go to the hospital, the epidemic will spread. But most importantly, we think seniors, poor people, illegal immigrants aren't getting the treatment they need. So in the best case scenario, we think we should prioritize lives over everything we said. For all these reasons, proud to oppose.
All right, thank you. Pro side, prep time.
I'm gonna take 1 minute and 30 seconds of prep time.
Sure.
That's fair. Starting now.
Okay, and I can start if it's not
Right.
over. Mhm. I'll get my timer. Okay. Is that ready? Opponents ready? The time starts now. First, given the source of showing that social media is decreasing polarization, the University of Northern Iowa researchers found across a variety of measures that using social media as a source of political information appears to decrease polarization, which means that there's contention too based on social media increased polarizations that simply do not stand. Let's first do some observation. First of all, both sides have agreed on, first, right to life is more important, thus saving life, equipping everyone with the healthcare right is the fundamental thing we need to discuss in today's debate. And second, as individual beings, we are responsible to ideas and actions we committed by ourselves. So there's no such thing called I do whatever the ad told me to do. And thus, as individuals with free will and different weighing of rights, we also have the right to voluntarily give out part of our privacy to fulfill other rights and overall interests, including the right to life, the right to health, the right to security, and so on. Thus, the counting should never prevent us from fulfilling this right. And evidence has shown that 86% of people are still willing to use Google services, even if they know that Google is collecting their personal data. People still use Facebook, even if they know that the Cambridge Analytica is happening. Thus, it is the pro side that represent the value of the most people and weighing gaining convenience over fully preserve privacy. Then I'll rebut the rebuttals and emphasize our impact. First, our contention one. Opponents attacked our case based on target advertisement, which is brought up in our contentions. Now, no mentioning ad itself. I'm sorry, who's speaking?
Sorry, I will mute it.
Should we
Please
start
hold.
now?
Sure.
Okay, the time restart now. Contention one, our opponents attacked our case based on targeted advertisement, which is never brought up in our contentions, thus it is not engaged with contention. And for targeted advertisement itself, we have mentioned that it is opt-out and it is all about our free choice. And according to McKinsey Global Institute, there are several ways in which using personal data can create value, including collecting more accurate and detailed performance information and boost performance, use data collection analysis to conduct experiments and make better management decisions, as I said in Crossfire. So our opponents charging that it is not related to personal data just do not stand. And from these usage, we generate huge economic growth, providing higher life quality and more opportunity for companies and consumers, resulting in tremendous social welfare, fulfilling people's right of gaining higher life standards, security, healthier environment, and open economy. Our opponents never engage with our evidence that $3 trillion is generated from the use of personal data, half of which goes to the consumers, which clearly, half of which will go to the consumer, which clearly shows that consumers are also benefit in this process. And then for our contention two, they actually attacked with a policy saying that hospitals are wealth-driven, but they have price discrimination to people. But price discrimination is something mutual. It charges the rich people with more money and the poor people with less money. Under this circumstances, poor people should not be denied the access to healthcare, but receive lower prices. So we can see that what they brought up saying that poor people will be denied access do not stand. And also, in contention two, we revolutionized the healthcare industry in three ways. First of all, we give more personalized treatment to patients according to their information, which produce the best outcome for ones in urgent need. Second, we predict diseases earlier with 90% accuracy. And third, we contain the epidemic with anonymized encrypted data. Thus, we save $200 billion per year for patients and enhance the quality of life. For all the reasons above, we're proud to propose. I'm sorry, there is an interruption, so I make it longer a little bit.
Yeah, no worries. Does any sign need prep time before Grand Crossfire? If not, whenever you guys are ready.
Do you ever read the consent statements in Facebook agreements?
Oh, firstly, I do. Secondly, I think people who don't read these statements still have the right to decide whether they agree to such contracts. I think they're responsible for their own actions.
Wait. So if I'm a regular consumer, and I don't read the 50 pages that Facebook sends me when I sign up for the service, I shouldn't have the right to decide whether or not I'm being price discriminated against. So if I'm an illiterate old man, or if I'm an illiterate immigrant,
why does you not understanding?
Okay, you literally just said, if I don't read the terms and conditions, I shouldn't have the right to decide what content is shown to me or not. So if I'm an illiterate immigrant, you're saying I shouldn't have the right to decide what content is shown to me?
Wait, I never said that. I said you not reading the statement,
like 2 seconds ago.
You not understanding the statement does not prevent you from agreeing to it. right? Everyone can agree to whatever they believe is best for them. You are not entitled to make that judgment for other individuals.
Do you understand the definition of consent? Consent means the person has to make a decision that they're aware about. They have to be aware of the terms and conditions they're agreeing to.
Yes,
you
I
can't
think they're
agree
more
to something
aware than
can't
you are.
understand.
The point is that the agreements are written in totally readable languages. It is in every detail to show to the customers to read.
Once again,
if you don't read it, it's not the fault of the company.
If I'm an illegal immigrant, or if I'm a person who is illiterate, how am I supposed to understand the terms and conditions, which are over 50 pages long and written in legal language? I don't see how this is a valid.
We're talking about majority in this world. We're talking about majority in this world. Do you think most
you
people
never provide us with a piece of evidence that the majority of the world would read the terms and conditions? But go ahead.
Can we move on to the next question?
Yes, let's ask another question.
So do you think that corporations being profit-driven are actually something bad?
We think that profit is a great thing, but we don't think that profit is a great thing when it only helps the big corporations. And we have shown you time and time again that it shuts out the most disadvantaged people in society. At that point, we think it's a really bad thing. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay, great. Do you think that as a society, we should pay the most amount of attention towards people at the very bottom of the social income ladder, or should we look towards benefiting big corporations?
Yes, of course, that is something we should choose. That is why we should ease the healthcare cost and equip everyone with the basic right of receiving healthcare.
People at the very bottom of the social income ladder, right?
Yes, they are equipped. Only by reducing the healthcare cost, as you said, can we equip them with the right. Let me ask you a question.
Great.
You have specific evidence on the harm that targeted advertisement does to the poor? Specific evidence.
We have never read specific evidence talking about targeted advertisement. We talked about
price
discrimination. We talked about how EHRs are. We actually don't. That was about healthcare data. That wasn't about personalized advertisements shown on the internet. That was healthcare advertisements. Those are very different things. I would like to make that distinction very clear in today's debate.
We gave you evidence from Vox News, New England Journal, the Lown Institution that explicitly says that it leads to overdiagnosis and death of
time's up.
Okay. Does the con side need prep time before final focus?
Yes. Can I use running prep time, please?
Sure.
That's fair. Starting now.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry. My partner just there's some internet fallacies. He's still connecting. So yeah, I think.
Shall we pause the prep time?
Yeah, we should pause for a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, let's wait for him to rejoin.
Well, I think you can just continue the prep time and I'll tell you when he's back on.
Sure.
Yeah, that works too. I mean, he has like 2 minutes of prep time left anyways.
Yeah. Okay, he's back.
Hi, my internet connection broke down.
Yeah, no worries. It's good that you're back.
Okay. All right. My time starts now. To conclude today's debate, I would like to give an overview of some of the major clash points that we talked about in today's debate. The first one is on the economy. Realize that they never once again specify what type of data they're using. They simply read you out a generic piece of evidence and they don't actually have a citation for that. But even if we're taking them at their best case, what we told you is that New York Times tells you that even when they stopped this personalized treatment, that not only did revenue stabilize, but it actually increased under our world. But furthermore, that we don't think this is a worthy trade-off to democracy. And The Guardian tells you this leads to surveillance capitalism. This leads to all of the insidious forms of marketing and the deaths that we give you in our case. choice. But fourth, we tell you the consumers are not the ones benefiting, and we tell you that price discrimination happens where the people at the very bottom of the social income ladder have to pay more for basic necessities. This is something which we have given you multiple examples for. Once again, my opposition doesn't provide you with any counter evidence. But furthermore, on healthcare, realize that we tell you that the Journal of the American Medical Association tells you that this fails in the majority of circumstances on their side of the house. But furthermore, we tell you that this shuts out children, seniors, people with disabilities, immigrants, low-income individuals. But furthermore, ProPublica tells you that they are racist in selecting who gets this healthcare in the first place. So no matter how much they're going to cut costs, it's not going to matter because it's never going to get to those people in the first place. But fourth, we talked about hack data, once again, something which does not go to be contested within today's debate. But furthermore, on coronavirus, realize that they never extend this through the second half of the debate. And we already told you that this disposes the most vulnerable individuals, such as undocumented immigrants. But now let's go on to the major voting issue within today's debate, which is the most disadvantaged people within today's world. The only tangible benefit which they ever talk about in the second half of the debate is that they reduce healthcare costs, but they never tell us how much percentage of these costs they're actually going to cut or through which mechanism. But what we have told you is that 250,000 children and over 150,000 people are dying currently right now because of this personal information in our first contention. We also told you that price discrimination happens and people cannot afford the most basic necessities. We also told you there's an 80% error rate for crime convictions for people of color. And we also told you that there are 15 terrorist attacks directly connected towards personal information. Do not allow them to bring up a new rebuttal within their final focus. We have proven to you that today's debate should go towards the con side. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Does the pro side want to use their prep time?
Yes.
All right, that's fair. You have 43 seconds running now.
Time's up. Time's up.
Okay. Time starts now. First, let me just engage with proposition's final focus material. They said their side benefits the most unprivileged individuals. We simply reject their assumption. We have provided you 3 reasons why our side are the ones who benefit the most unprivileged individuals. First, because economic growth ultimately trickles down and benefits the worst off individuals in the society. Second, because we provide a plan that potentially drastically cuts healthcare treatment costs and reduces them and makes them accessible for everyday treatment for all individuals. But third, we say that this is not relevant in today's debate because they're largely unprivileged due to systemic discrimination that already exists and does not have anything to do with personal data. That is why we think their sole voting issue does not stand. Now, why do we win? Firstly, on a principle level, we say that consumers who are uneducated, who don't know what terms of service agreements are talking about, which is not the majority of consumers, do have the right to still agree to it. Because these consumers think for themselves that it's a mutually beneficial relationship, and Conside is not entitled to make this choice for them. We think that every individual has the right to agree to something that he or she deems maximizes his or her utility, and Conside is not the person that should be judging what that utility lies on. We think every individual should be able to engage in a relationship that he or she wants to engage in, and Conside simply does not have the right to prevent themselves to prevent the society from doing this. Finally, let's weigh the practical impacts provided by pro and con. At the end of the debate, the Conside basically dropped their entire case and decided to emphasize echo chambers. It results in 15 more terrorist attacks. But we've told you that these attacks are largely non-unique because there's a significant difference between holding a belief and killing for it. There's something inherently wrong with these individuals. We've also told you that polarization is an inevitable trend that will be exacerbated regardless of the use of personal data. What we offered you is $3 trillion in benefit from the McKinsey Global Institute that benefits every single individual in the society in multiple forms. We've told you in the constructive. We also gave you that healthcare benefits the least well off in the society, and the extent of their response to the EHR is bad. What we discussed was a different plan that has immense potential and has passed certain trials and experiments. They have engaged with our case, we've engaged with their case, vote pro.
All right, cheers. Great job, both teams. The judges and I will now take a few minutes to gather our thoughts, and we'll let you know about our individual decisions very soon.
If any judge have decided the result, you can tell me.
Wait, but can we work on the mini program first?
Sure.
Oh, sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't quite catch that.
No, like I was asking if we can work on the mini program first.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
I think that everyone needs to confirm the debaters so that we can vote on the mini program.
I'm sorry, but I didn't hear it clearly.
Aaron, I don't know who Aaron is, but you would have to. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Hey, Aaron, can you confirm on the mini program? Because we can't vote if you don't confirm.
So I was never able to have the mini program working on my phone. It said that like there was errors and stuff like that. So I've just been doing ballots the old-fashioned way. But I can send my decision to the host once I know who in this group is the host.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay. Okay.
So what we should do now is to send our results to the host privately.
Yeah.
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 The host is
that
Rocky
would work.
Leo, just for reference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, now every judges has sent their result to me, and now I have filled in on the screen, and the winner, and 2 judges voted for pro and the 3 judges voted for con, and the winner is the FAHC.
Okay, so congratulations to both teams.
And does any judge want to give some feedbacks or comments?
Yeah, I think we could go in order and just say a little about how we came to our decision. I'll start off just to make things easier. Overall, I thought that it was actually a pretty close debate, and I really look towards the final focus and summary in particular, because I felt like the rebuttals and stages prior to that were all very close, to be totally honest with you guys. But the crystallization, the summary, and final focus really sold me on the con side of things. And I'll just go over a few voting issues that I came across. The major one that I did focus on was whether we can help the disadvantaged of society. You guys also did bring up issues such as crime and terrorism, but that wasn't really extended throughout the entirety of the debate, so I kind of dropped that. And you guys didn't really seem to prioritize those impacts as much as the healthcare impacts, so that wasn't really something that I considered. Also, you guys spend a significant amount of time discussing the terms of service, but to the pro side, here's the question that I would ask is, what's the eternal impact of these terms of services? Like basically a so what question, if you can understand what I mean. Like I totally buy the argument that people should be able to make their own decisions. People can come to their own ways of thinking, and people should be held responsible for what they do. But like, so what is the impact of that exactly? I feel like you guys kind of sold me on the philosophy of the terms of service, but you guys didn't sell me on the application of the terms of service, if that makes any sense. Like it works in theory, but how about in practice, if that makes sense to you? And essentially what I focused on was the issue of helping the disadvantaged. Now, both teams touched on this for the majority of the frontal focus, which I really appreciated. So the con basically was talking about issues such as price discrimination, revenue increasing even if we don't focus on personalized data, and also brought up a really key statistic about how many kids and minority individuals are actually dying because of this like corrupt data set that they're currently manipulating. Basically what the con is doing here is that they concede that the system is racist to begin with, and basically cutting costs at this point doesn't matter. So that kind of just takes away all of the impacts which Pro is advocating for here. Pro kind of advocates how the outside benefits will still be improved, but it just wasn't enough to the point, because you guys kind of talk about this trickle-down economic philosophy to make healthcare available, but you guys never really make it explicit to me in terms of how many people are going to be impacted, whether those people are at the bottom of the social structure. You kind of just talk about this general statistic, but if you guys could really specify that to me and just make it really explicit, that would really help for me to make my final decision voting. But overall, honestly, guys, you guys were both fantastic, and I think you guys will go far in debate. Yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts about the thing.
All right, thanks, Richard. So I want to explain how I come to my decision by saying how Khan eventually convinced me. First of all, Khan's stakeholder targeted on vulnerable groups explained the significance. They told me like senior citizens and poor people, while Pro focused on using personal data to conduct research and development, Khan focused on vulnerable groups' interests because they noticed it cannot be guaranteed. Therefore, it could widen the gap between the rich and poor, cause more social problems. Therefore, with the comparison that Khan provided me, I do believe their stakeholder matters more. However, Plural, you should do a better job with the consistency with the framework. You mentioned that in your constructive speech that you targeted on the social goods. Not only you have to explain the mechanism, but also tell us what exactly is your stakeholder. Even though you say majority of the society, you did point it out, but just saying majority does not justify the significance. What you could do better is to categorize and to do the comparison so you can tell us which road is more desirable. I do believe in your impact analysis for Pro, you should be enhanced by focusing on the correlation to, on like the personal data was challenged, correlation to the argument to your personal data, to the use of personal data. It was challenged and was not explicitly answered, like whether personal data is a key method to improve tech in healthcare, for example, and what's the unique contribution. And I think the most obvious thing that you did not do good for Pro is that while you're too over in your head attacking Khan, you could do a better job at defending your own case. So in terms of healthcare, you didn't directly get to engage with the key counter evidence brought up by Khan. So during rebuttals, I hear more assumptions for you. Even explaining the incentive and deducting the likelihood is valid, as well as mentioning the alternatives and precautions. But it is not as convincing as providing concrete and empirical examples of data to show us what is actually working in the real world. So that's how I come to my decision. Thank you, and congrats on the con.
Well, I actually vote for the vote for the Pro. I'm sorry. The problem I have with Khan's case is basically what Puan pointed out: the issues of overdiagnosis, overtreatment, racism, crime, etc. These are like existing even without the employment of personal data, and how personal data usage will directly like worsen the situation, make it so bad that we have to do something now. So I feel like your case is a little bit more general compared with the Pro's target over personalized product service and personalized healthcare system. So I feel like in a case scenario, the Pro side has done a slightly better job. On the second level of engagement, that's my issue with the con as well. You spend the entire rebuttal speech talking about new points, and I think it's a little bit unfair for the Pro team because Pro's second speaker spent his entire speech rebutting the con first speaker's framework. Obviously, he does not have enough time to cover all the material brought by both speakers from com. So I hear the arguments of underprivileged group expose individuals, they might face deportation, death sentences, etc. I think it's a little unfair to put the burden on the pro side to resolve all this. So that's why I feel on the engagement level, I favor pro over con side, and kind of not giving that much credit over the underprivileged group to the con side. And the idea of consumers' freedom of choice, I think, but I think this is the pro side has done enough, good enough. So the con side say, well, because those consumers they are vulnerable, they're poorly educated, they cannot make the decision. The pro side say, hey, first, people are not that stupid, they can't make the decision. Second, even if they cannot, they're human beings, they care for their own lives. Who are you to tell me what to do? So even if a stupid person has the right to make the choice they desire to do. So I feel like we have two layers of responses, and I do not think the freedom of choice come to the con side. So I vote for pro in the end. That's all.
I guess I can go real fast. I thought it was a really, really great debate. Very close. A couple issues I'm kind of left with is I feel like the pro, like Richard was saying, by the final focus, could have done a better job explaining exactly how personal data can improve things, whether it's businesses or healthcare, and specifically kind of beating back against this claim that relatively few people have access to those benefits, like increasing healthcare diagnostics or increasing managerial business programs or whatever it is. So yeah, it just seems like the people who are most vulnerable, those who are facing different conditions for one reason or another, may not be able to be helped as much. And I'm left kind of wondering how much of the economy will really grow just as a result of data. I do think there were a lot of issues, a lot of interesting points going back and forth, which at various times perhaps were a little bit difficult to parse through, like even in Crossfire, which exactly we're talking about. Like there's the issue of predatory lending, discriminatory targeted advertising, all these kind of issues. Perhaps by the time you get to the final focus, it could be a little bit clearer on both sides. Like these are how exactly it hurts or helps people. Does that make sense? But overall, great job.
Okay.
Great job.
Okay, so I think that personally, I felt that Pro did a much better job, even though the debate was like really close. It was a close call because like at a point in time, I didn't even know who I was voting for. But then I gave my vote to Pro because I felt that Pro had like Pro provided statistics. They were like more. They narrowed their scope. They provided the data. They had like enough cases from like various contexts. Like example, when they mentioned the corona or the COVID-19 bit, they mentioned like they made comparison between like China, South Korea, Singapore, and then the US. Okay, I felt like Pro had more evidence, and then they had like various sources of data spread across to support whatever they were saying. And also, I felt that they personally defended their stance very well, as opposed to like Con. And one problem that I also had with Con was the fact that even though during the very first Crossfire, when Paul mentioned the fact that they did not mention like targeted ads, Con still made mention of that particular case or term or whatever in their rebuttal, and based an entire rebuttal on that particular term or definition or however, or claim. Yeah, let me put it that way. So I feel that even though both things were like really good and that you knew what you were about and all, I personally felt that on the general, Pro did a much better job in defending their stance and providing like the exact and like the exact cases to support whatever arguments that they raised in the debate. Yeah.
So I think that's all the judges. Anyways, thanks guys for coming out today. I really appreciate it. And let us know if you have any questions. If not, thank you so much again. And we'll see you in the next debate, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.